This episode is brought to you by Amazon Prime. From streaming to shopping, Prime helps you get more out of your passions. So whether you're a fan of true crime or prefer a nail-biting novel from time to time, with services like Prime Video, Amazon Music, and fast free delivery, Prime makes it easy to get more out of whatever you're into or getting into. Visit Amazon.com/Prime to learn more.
This episode is brought to you by JCPenney. Yes, JCPenney. And if you've been there recently, you know it's the place to go for jaw-dropping looks at brag-worthy prices. They've got something special for every style and budget, not to mention rewards and deals that make finding those hidden gems even sweeter. If you already shop JCPenney, you're already in on the secret. But if not, it's time to ask. Wait, am I sleeping on JCPenney? Shop JCPenney.com. Yes, JCPenney.
Hello and welcome to the I Can Do podcast with Benjamin Lee. We're here to talk about tips and strategies to have an I Can Do mindset. Life is what you put into it. Get the most you can. Here's your host, Benjamin Lee.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of I Can Do. I'm Benjamin Lee. Wherever you're listening, thank you so much for giving this podcast your time, and really looking forward to this conversation. We have another fantastic guest on the show today. Coach Terrence Brown is on the show with us. Coach, how are you doing?
I appreciate your time, Ben. I'm doing well. And it's summertime, so it's vacation time, and
yeah,
trying to get a chance to debrief before season gets into all the hecticness and just staying busy at all times. So just enjoying some of this downtime.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I really appreciate you being on the show. Should I call you Coach or Terrence, or how do you want to be referred to?
Yeah, Terrence is fine. Yeah, Terrence.
All right.
I feel like you call me Coach. I feel like I'm talking to one of my players, or I'm talking to a recruit, and I'm talking to their parents or whoever it may be. So Terrence.
Yeah, that's right. Well, I'll tell you what, man. So Terrence is a defensive back coach at the University of Cal, and you've been there since 2022. And really impressive resume. I will tell you what, though. I'm 45. I have slowed down quite a bit, but I still do HIIT training. I work out. And you got me fired up. I wish I could say that I had a good history playing football in high school. I did not. I had a hard time putting the pads getting them situated in the pants and things like that in the 7th and 8th grade. I got hit in the throat one time in one of the games. I was like, I don't know if this is going to work. So I ended up being in the marching band, wishing I was out there playing football. But you got me fired up today.
Well, you probably saved yourself from a decent amount. So you don't have to worry about trying to remember what you did yesterday.
Right. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
I have to do a decent amount of time. My wife gets so frustrated with me. She's like, "Man, you can't remember anything." I'm like, "Baby, I'm sorry. Try to my head, not to my heart."
That's right. Well, we love football. One of the things, my wife, Nikki, we were just talking about family, and we met in 2003, actually in Syracuse, New York. We were at a church event. It was called a Campaign for Christ. And her maiden name was Benjamin. So I said, hey, let's just go ahead and get married. But it didn't go exactly like that. But she, when I met her, she was into football. And I was like, I cannot believe this. So her dad has always been a big Dolphins fan because she grew up in Florida. And so, we would just talk. And I was like, this is unbelievable. We can have a conversation, And so that was something that was really awesome. And meeting her and my son, Josh, we love watching football on Sundays, and it's obviously expanding I remember growing up Monday Night Football, with Al and Frank and, those guys. That was like the big thing. And now it just keeps getting bigger and bigger. And I love to, kind of pick your brain with that a little bit more. But if you can, I'd love to hear your story of your journey to football and how now you've been coaching in the college ranks for a number of years. How did all this get started?
Yeah, I mean, if I could be honest with you,
please,
it's all credit to God.
Amen.
I wouldn't be in the position that I'm in without Him gifted me with the talents and the gifts, the abilities to, one, to play the game, but two, to understand it, to carry me on for years. And it really was spearheaded by my father. So I'm the oldest of two. My father's name's Terrence Brown Sr., so I'm the junior. My mother's name is Christina Brown, and my brother's name is Christopher Brown. And so in our household, it ran like this: it was faith, it was family, and it was every extracurricular activity that came after that. My father is a pastor. He's been a pastor for, I want to say, I'm 30, I'm 33. So I want to say he's been a pastor for about 30 years. So somewhere around um, that time frame. And so faith was priority number one. Our Sundays, our Tuesdays, our Wednesdays, our Thursdays were dedicated to spending quality time, developing a relationship with God, and as every other day was, but those days in particular, family. I come from a tight knit family, as I just said. It's only two of us in terms of siblings, but I come from a big family of cousins. My mom was one of 8, and my dad was one of 3. But on my mom's side of the family, I think I have close to 50 plus first cousins. And so growing up, my friends, my teammates were my cousins. So from football to track to baseball, that's where a lot of my time was spent, at the church, practice, and with my family. And so my dad, found out that I guess we're athletically gifted enough to do something. And football became natural, came easy. It was something that I did, um, you know, fairly easy, to be honest with you. I understood the game, played multiple positions growing up, and actually was playing quarterback in pop corner football after getting used to contact playing. My father started me playing on the offensive line, so I played tight end, tackle.
Oh, nice.
And I was one of the smaller guys on the team, but it was, with the intent of getting used to, the physical contact part of the game, because I didn't play flag football. I just went straight into tackle football at the age of 7. And
Nice.
so, and it was after, maybe a few years, happened to be, one of the better players on the team, and really committed to, I guess, mastering the craft of playing the game of football. So in the extra time when I wasn't, at choir rehearsal, when I wasn't, doing homework or working on a science fair project or whatever it may be, my extracurricular time, it was spent at the park.
Nice.
Or in my grandmother's backyard, really working to master my craft at a young age. And this was before all these like personal trainers like started to come about, over the years. This was just literally homegrown teaching. And I had some family friends that had played football at a high level that would always provide me with little pointers and tips here and there. But it was, I would say, around 10, 11 years old where I came to understanding that like this is what I wanted to do. And I think that's where my mind shifted to, okay, how can I get an opportunity to further my education, right? And for free at that. My parents didn't go to college. They went to community college and they did 1 to 2 years, but they were raised to start working. And so they started working after being 2 years in community college, and raising two fine young men. And that was their mission. And so my intent was, okay, how am I going to get to school and have it be paid for and taken care of? And the only way that I knew how was to earn a scholarship. And so my parents made sure that I handled my business in the classroom, stayed on top of my academics, understood the work ethic in the classroom, submitted assignments on time. I was a bit of a procrastinator at times because some classes did come a bit easy to me as well. But
good.
And that really trampolined me into earning scholarship opportunities. Going into my junior year in high school, I think it was going into my junior year in high school, started earning scholarship opportunities, and it was only a handful, but it was more than none. And that was a big
That's right.
thing. That was a big thing for me and for my family. I was fortunate enough to earn a scholarship and go on and further my education, graduate from Stanford University,
Yeah.
and to be first generation from Los Angeles, California, Compton, California,
Nice.
first generation to go to Stanford in my family was a big deal.
Absolutely.
It was a really big deal.
Yeah.
And I took that to heart because I wanted to inspire those that followed after me to have the desire to do whatever it is they set their hearts to do, whatever that
Mm-hmm.
looked like. You know, I didn't want them
Mm-hmm.
to be exactly like me, but I wanted them to see what was possible and what was attainable. And
Yeah.
so, played, graduated from Stanford, and I happened to be there during some pretty successful years.
Yeah.
Jim Harbaugh was my head coach my first 2 years, and then David
That's
Shaw.
what I was going to ask you.
Yeah,
Yeah, you were there. Yeah, so two great
yeah,
coaches there.
yeah.
But before you move on, let me ask you a question because I really appreciate you sharing what you're sharing. For those who are listening, you said a lot of school and stuff came easy to you. What kind of sacrifices did you have to make to stay on your school, get into Stanford? Obviously there's sacrifices in anything. I'm curious, what did that look like? Because I think that will help the audience as well. People sometimes just hear certain things and stories,
Right,
but there's a lot more, I'm sure, behind that of, okay, in order for you to get a full ride, what did you also have to miss out on?
right. Uh, I guess I don't necessarily look at it as missing out on, and I think that comes with just maturation over the years. If you would ask me this question at 24 years old, I probably told you I missed out on a lot.
Mm,
But I look at it more as I had the opportunity to invest my time in something that would allow for me to better my life, right? And so, in terms of sacrifice, um, the things that I probably um, missed out on. I didn't necessarily hang out with a lot of people like that. Like I didn't hang out with friends, on a regular Wednesday night, whatever it may be, or Saturday night, like Saturday night or a Friday night. I didn't, you know, go to parties, or I didn't, spend a lot of time at the mall or at the beach. Now, I'm not saying that I didn't do any of those things, but it was not at high amount of times, I should say. Like it wasn't a large number in terms of those opportunities. For instance, like on Sundays, this is a prime example. On Sundays, we would go to Sunday school,
mhm.
go to 11 a.m. worship. After 11 a.m. worship, we would go get a quick lunch, and then we would go to the field around 2 o'clock, 2:30 in the afternoon on Sunday afternoon, and then we would be at the field till about 4 o'clock. And so, that's one example where others may have went straight home, sat in their house, watched TV, Sunday football, or was hanging around in the neighborhood riding their bikes, whatever it may be. Like that didn't exist for us, and so it was a lot of just missing out on um, opportunities that weren't beneficial for what it was that I was trying to accomplish. And so and you talk about sacrifice, that's what it may be. Uh, Now my parents weren't strict by any means. Like my dad, obviously being a minister, um, and he had maybe have made his mistakes growing up. Like he, wanted to model what grace looked like. And so there were times where we may have made some poor decisions. And it was, obviously, train up a child in the way they should go. When they leave, they shall not depart. And
Amen.
he definitely, gave us tough love and things of that nature. But he wasn't strict, wasn't overbearing. Like I didn't have, put it this way, when I was in high school, I didn't have a curriculum. I mean, what is it?
Curfew.
Curfew. I didn't have a curfew, right? I don't even know what it is. I never had it, right? I didn't have a curfew, but that's because I didn't necessarily do anything outside of
Yeah.
training or spending time with family.
Yeah.
And so that, if that answers your question in terms
It
of,
does. Yeah.
it was all more so, okay, what decision is going to benefit me in the long run?
I love that. And I appreciate you sharing that. What decision is going to benefit us in the long run? Because you said, okay, you were thinking about this when you were 10 or 11. And I mentioned too, before we started hitting the record button, we're going through a book with our son, 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens. And that's what it talks about. It talks about setting a goal. And this idea, I have a book here by Trevor Mawad. He since has passed, but he was he was a coach for Russell Wilson, like a mentor coach, and he worked at University of Alabama and different places like that. But it's just like, it takes what it takes, and that's what it sounds like. What you're saying, it's like, okay, if this is the goal, then I have to eliminate the other things. And I love that it's not even necessarily a sacrifice. It can be, but the goal is, that's what it's all about. And so I really appreciate you sharing that and walking us through that, because it's easy just to sometimes look at other people and say, man, look how far they've gone. But there was so much, what I'm hearing, intentionality in how you were conducting yourself, how you were living.
Right. Yeah. I think the awareness
piece
is key, right? I mean, I think we're kind of going through it right now with our 4-year-old son. It's just, one of my prayers is, God, like, just provide me with the guidance, direction to steward the gift that you have bestowed upon him. And I don't know what those gifts are, but that's something that, as time goes, that I can continue to gain clarity and discernment of what those particular gifts are. But just the awareness, I think I had the awareness at a young age that I happened to be, pretty good. I don't want to say I was, the guy, but it came natural to me. And so since it came natural to me, well, I'm going to invest time in becoming the best version of myself in some form or fashion. And so.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. So you were there, and that's crazy thinking about this. I watched you, even though I didn't know you. But I remember Stanford and, beating USC. I can't remember what year that may have been in, and just the rise, of the school, and then Coach Shaw coming in and doing a great job as well for so many years. So tell us, what position did you play once you got into college? Were you playing multiple positions, or did you end up finally on the defensive side for good?
Yeah, I was on the defensive side for good. That actually became about going into my senior year of high school.
Okay.
But I stuck solely with playing corner.
Nice.
When I got in college, I played corner and a little bit of nickel as well. So I much rather prefer delivering the blow than taking the blow. That's really where that came from. And just, tackling the challenge of, something that's out of the ordinary, to go backwards, where in human, living, normal human living, we go forward, we walk
right.
forward. So, to do something that was out of the ordinary was something that I took a lot of pride in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it happened to be, like you said, the rise. I think the first that SC upset was in 2006. And I was, going into my junior year of high school. And then 2009 was my freshman year, and that's we 8-4, and then the next 3 years we happened to have BCS type caliber seasons, and so there was a lot learned during that time. I got a chance to be around some really, really like tremendous football players, from Andrew Luck to the Zach Ertz to the Drew Terrells, the Levine Toilolos, the Stephon Taylor. Like, there's so many names, Josh Garnett. Like, there's so many names that I could list off. Richard Sherman.
That's what I was thinking about.
Right? So I had the chance to play alongside all of those guys and really learn from some of the best coaches in the game of football. From Jim Harbaugh, the David Shaws, the Derek Masons, the Jason Tarvers, it's just, the Tavita Pritchards. There's so many names that I was really fortunate to be around and to pick up on their intellect, pick up on their work ethic, their dedication, to see them how they operated around their families, and then it carried into who I am today. You know, obviously that's the rival school now. It's on the other side of the field.
That's right. That's
But
right.
I was extremely blessed to be around high level experts in
Yeah.
the game of football. So
Yeah. Terrence, I don't know if everybody truly understands, at least this is what I think, just how tough football is. Obviously, it is physically, but mentally, like how big was the playbook in college, you know, when you were playing? Because that's one of the things I'm just astounded with, just putting the playbook to memory, or when someone gets traded mid-season, or now with college, the portal, you
yeah.
know, a new person's coming in, a new player's coming in, they got to pick up a playbook. Will you walk us through that? That may be more personally for me, but I'm curious, how long did it take you, you know, when you stepped foot there freshman year, to put all that to memory, and how long does that work? What does that look like today as a coach?
Yeah, I mean, I was fortunate that like I said, I'd been taught the game of football for a long time from my dad, and he had been around some high level, you know, type experts in terms of the game of football, and so my football IQ was fairly high,
Yeah.
and so you know, from high school, like my defensive coordinator, from high school, coach at the collegiate level. His name was his name was Thurman Moore, and he even, you know, still coaches high school football to this day. But you know, playing in that system and playing in that scheme prepared me mentally
Mhm.
uh, to to understand like what the demands are to pick up, you know, the playbook and the information to compartmentalize, you know, the different cover schemes, you know, language, try to word associate. I think that helped out a lot because when I got to college, my defensive coordinator was Ron Lynn, and Ron Lynn coached professionally for the LA Raiders back in the day. And then actually going into my sophomore year, my defensive coordinator was Vic
Yeah.
Fangio, who's now the defensive coordinator for the Philadelphia Eagles. And
Yeah.
so I played in the NFL structured system. And
Hmm.
so in terms of information, it was a lot of it. But
Yeah.
being able to, like, again, the association, the compartmentalization, the different buzzwords that, you know, associated with one particular call compared to the next call is what allowed for me to uh, pick up the information fairly quickly. Now, obviously, there was still some learning bumps and bruises that, you know, I had to experience, you know, throughout my time. But I think I think I had the upper hand on a lot of people in terms of my initial football IQ. Now, in terms of just information overload in general, even now, in terms of playbooks, coach's job is to make it simple,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so, if you have a good coach that can teach in a way that makes it, you know, fairly easy to comprehend, I think that is what goes a long way. I think I have some really good coaches that were really good teachers, and I think that's something that, you know, I take pride in, is being a good teacher to try to make it as simple as possible for our players to pick up information, to be able to digest it, and then not only be able to understand it, but to be able to apply it, you
Right.
know, when there are, you know, 60,000 plus fans watching you in
Yeah.
critical moments of the game, right? And so, and a lot of that comes with, you know, repetition, you know, just, you know, we find ways to, you know, get our guys up on the board and try to create some of that performance anxiety in front of the room, you know, give them a call and they have to draw their responsibilities. You know, that was something that I had to do when I was a player, you know, from simulation, walking through calls, just working on the communication, just so everybody understands what, you know, what their responsibility is and they understand what everybody else is doing in that particular call. And then just the replication of game like reps and practice. And so all of that uh, accumulates to a young man being able to digest the information Now, you know, there are some freshmen you throw them out there, and the first week or so, they still, you know, still trying to figure it out. But I think, you know, take a lot of pride in trying to simplify it as much as possible.
Yeah.
The word association, the compartmentalization, I think gives the young men the best opportunity to learn the scheme in which they play in. Now, I think offense is a bit more complex, you know, because they have different checks and adjustments, and you know, from call to call, and so
Yeah.
I can't necessarily speak for that side of the ball, but I do know on the side of the ball, that's what we try to do.
Let me ask you one more, and I want to talk about the performance anxiety because I find that really fascinating. Do you remember any of those old plays? If so, can you rattle off one of them?
Oh
I
yeah,
don't
I remember them like it was yesterday.
give us a play so the audience can hear how detailed it is.
So we you know, we had a quarter half coverage that we ran quite frequently when I played. I don't remember the exact name of the call, but I remember like how when it was delivered, the signaling, like I can still see it to this day. And it basically was like, in football terms, it was a over front. So over front is where you have four down linemen. You have four down linemen, and they're shaded based on the guard and the nose tackle are shaded based off of whatever those front rules are. And I want to say this was set to the field, so the three tech would be to the field. The nose would be in the shade, which is like aligned over the guard on the other side of the center. And then you have your two outside linebackers. And then we had two off the ball linebackers. And then around them was the 5 DB. So we're playing quarters to the field.
I see.
And then to the boundary, we're playing cover 2. And
Yeah.
so that was like one of our bread and butter calls. And I know that I made a decent amount of plays on that call.
Now at Chipotle, our all-new Chipotle Honey Chicken brings Chipotle heat with a touch of sweet. Seared smoked peppers and savory Mexican spices, blended with a hint of pure honey for a perfectly balanced sauce. All combined with fresh, tender chicken hot off the grill, served up in your favorite burrito or bowl. New Chipotle Honey Chicken takes heat and sweet to a whole new level. But it's only at Chipotle for a limited time. Order now in the app for pickup or delivery. Chipotle, for real.
Hellmann's believes they can turn any mayo hater into a lover. So, if you know someone who thinks mayo equals bland, show their taste buds the truth and challenge them to try Hellmann's flavored mayo. With irresistible flavors like Hellmann's spicy mayo, garlic aioli, chipotle, and Italian herb, they'll be eating their words. Challenge haters to try Hellmann's flavored mayo and get them to eat their words. Learn more at hellmanns.com/eatyourwords.
So you had to know what everybody was doing.
I think when I got to when I started playing inside at the nickel position, that's when my football knowledge really started to like take another level, because essentially when you play at the nickel position, you're a DB and you're a linebacker at the same time.
Right.
And so you have to understand where your fit potentially could be based off of where this person is aligned. And then you also have to understand what your responsibilities are as it comes to coverage as well. And so that I'll say that's where like my knowledge of the defense as a whole took a jump. Now I'm a master at DB. I'm not a master at D-line play, and I'm not a master at inside linebacker play. But I have an understanding of how it all ties together.
Gotcha. Yeah. No, I just find that amazing. So I got a couple of books here. I want to talk about college students, professional players, in front of 60, 70, 80,000 people. Everyone's watching it now with NFL and even college. It's going to be a crazy season this year. This was our first book, It Takes What It Takes, which is a really fascinating book. Now, this book, and this is going to lead to my question, this is the New England Patriots. It's better to be feared. So when you mentioned that about, handling that pressure, there's one play in the Super Bowl against the Seattle Seahawks. And I watched it, and I'll never forget it. It's the fourth quarter. The Seahawks are at the 2-yard line, and there's like, a minute left. And they could just hand the ball off to Marshawn Lynch and run it in. But they put the camera on Bill Belichick, and he just stood there. There's no panic, and he just stood there. And hearing more about it, it sounded like he understood that they were maybe a little bit confused about what they were going to do. And he said, I'm just going to ride it out, essentially. And I was like, that is unbelievable, because most of the time you take the time out at the 2-yard line.
Right.
So that's what I want to know in particular. And you've mentioned football is like the game of life, where there's a lot of pressure. And how do we stay in the moment? How do you stay in that moment? You're fired up, running onto the field. It's second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter. How do you stay in the moment? How do you handle that pressure? Like, what are you doing? Is it a pregame? Is it something that you've created? Walk us through that.
Yeah, I think it varies from person to person. Like I think just the natural nerves. I think sometimes those are a bit challenging to evade, but I think you can still focus into what it is, whatever your task is, right? And so I think for me, dating back to when I was a player, because I'm a high passion, high energy individual, and so like I have to settle down, before the storm. And so for me, on the morning of game day, one thing I always do is I always listen to gospel music. I always listen to gospel music because I try to center myself and be able to spend that time with God to like allow for my natural anxieties, my natural nerves to come to a still, to come to a peace.
Okay.
And so that's what I do. And then when it comes to actually being in the atmosphere, being in the moment, my focus allows for me to, I guess, essentially push through all those nerves or whatever it may be, and that focus comes from my confidence, and that confidence comes from my preparation.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorite athletes of all time, rest in peace, is Kobe Bryant.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that he talks about all the time is his confidence comes from preparation. And so when I'm prepared, when I feel like I've prepared to the best of my ability, when I need to focus, all that anxiety, like it no longer exists. If anything, the anxiety may be bottled up into juice after I make a play, or for this instance, one of my players, make a play in a critical moment of the game. I would say that's what allows for me to be more grounded is, first and foremost, man, I gotta spend my time with my Lord and Savior, because
that's right.
That's what's gonna allow for me to just be where I need to be and be where my feet are, And so I think that's what I do, and it varies from for some people. Some people like to ramp it up. Like that's how they ramp it up. That's how they get, that's how they take control over those nerves or those anxieties, right? That's how that fear no longer exists, right? And so I think it just varies from person to person.
Yeah, no, I love that. I appreciate you sharing that. And I have a friend. He owns a public speaking company, and one of the things that he says is confidence is earned. And that's what you're saying, the preparation, that if you're I know Kobe Bryant watched a lot of game film too, just listening to old interviews and things like that, just breaking down Kevin Durant and other players. And it was just fascinating to see. What does that look like for you with respect to game film and how much time and things like that? What does that look like leading into a Saturday game?
Yeah, there's a lot of film breakdown. There's a lot of analyzing. There's a lot of study that goes on to essentially know your opponent come game day. Now, we play, or I should say, coach collegiate football, right? College football. So from week to week, offensive coordinators, they do what they do best and come up with different game plans. And so, what you gain from film study are tendencies.
Okay.
You're not going to get the coordinator's exact style of play call or his exact order of play call. You may think you may have a bat on that, but the reality is on the defensive side of the ball, we have no clue what we react. So
Yeah.
we try to pick up on tendencies, and that information that we gather from the hours of film that we actually watch, on a day-to-day basis, allows for us to develop a game plan to give our guys the best opportunity to have a chance to be successful, whatever that looks like. Rather that's uh, maybe implementing a new call from week to week that we feel is best suited for that particular scheme, or it's just relying on what our bread and butter calls are and allowing for our guys to go play fast. But the amount of film that we watch, I don't think you could put a time limit on it. To be honest with you, it's a lot of film. I jokingly say sometimes I think the film is watching me, but it's all with the intent of, all right, can we come up with the best plan for our guys to have a chance come Saturday?
Yeah.
And that's where, throughout the week, that's where we're, providing them with the information of, particular formation tendencies or, situational tendencies, whatever is going to give them, somewhat of an advantage, from down to down, to have a chance to defend their opponent. So there's a lot of, that the play you talked about with the Super Bowl, that you talked about with the Patriots and the Seahawks. Man, I remember watching a video following that play that Malcolm Butler had made. And in that video, they talk about how Malcolm Butler messed up
He
almost
messed up in practice.
every day in practice.
Yeah.
And you would be surprised how often that happens in football. That happens a lot. It happens a lot, where a young man may just not be getting the culture points or may not be applying the culture points that you've given them in that particular moment. And in the game, because you've drilled it and simulated in many forms in the game, it comes to life and you're like, man, and that's one of the most rewarding things as a coach is to revisit that the next day, to pull that clip up and to mirror it with the exact practice clip or the drill clip that looked exactly like that particular play that they made. And so, and that came from a lot of, film watch. Malcolm Butler understood, based off of this formation, this situation, what route concept was going to come, and he jumped it.
He jumped it. Yeah.
Most calculated risk that, we as defensive players have to be willing to take. We can't play the game safe all the time. We have to be willing to take risks.
How do you balance that as a coach with respect to, okay, a player's not getting it, then to the biggest stage, at least for the Super Bowl, but every game in college is a big stage because you're trying to become bowl eligible and win your, division and conference and things like that. How do you process that of, no, I'm gonna ride with this guy, I'm gonna leave him in? Any thoughts with that? I'm always curious, because you have a talent of evaluating talent and recruiting and so just is it just instinct? Is it just, no, I know he's going to figure this out? Walk us through that.
Well, I think what my shirt says right here, grace. I think that is you talk about ingredient. That is the number one ingredient in regards to those situations. Is
okay.
First and foremost, having played at this level, having played that position, having made those mistakes, having, fixed those mistakes, I have an understanding of how my student athletes may feel in those moments. And so first and foremost, like, although it's demanding and that they have a job to do and they've been recruited and they've been expected to do their job, they're still human at the same time. And so have to be able to model what grace looks like for them. And one, so they can give themselves grace. And so if I'm giving them grace in some form of fashion, they're gonna be like, all right, well, coach believes in me. Let me give myself grace, and I'm gonna get over this hump. I just gotta keep listening to the coach point, or find ways to, you know, uh, be able to digest it quicker or easier. I mean, maybe it's me watching more tape. Maybe it's me coming to sit in with coach. Maybe it's me doing another rep after practice, right? And so I think the grace is the first ingredient in terms of, and that's the most important ingredient.
Yeah.
And then I think, you know, that's where we talk about with our players. Our job is to build confidence. And so if I've built confidence in, you know, a young man, you know, throughout the entirety of an off season, throughout the entirety of a spring, throughout the entirety of a fall camp, you know, even early on in the season, and this is the 5th game in the season, and he's just having a hard time. Well, if he knows that I believe in him, right, then chances are he's going to be able to get over that hump.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are he's going to be able to get over that hump, and then, you know, it may not happen the next game, it may not happen the next play, but there will be, as long as my belief still is existing, then he'll have a chance to get over that hump and be able to thrive in those moments like Malcolm Butler did. Like that, a lot of that has to do with the belief of a coach. And so, you know, when those moments present themselves, you know, I just try to remember what it was like for me as a player.
Yeah.
You know, I tell my guys all the time, man, I remember playing the Fiesta Bowl, and, you know, we're playing against Oklahoma State, and it was and I want to say it was a 2nd and 10. It was a passing down situation. And we were trying to get Oklahoma State behind the sticks a little bit. And so my coach calls cover 0. He calls cover 0. It's out in the middle of the field. I know the coaching points. I know I'm supposed to play with inside leverage. I know I'm not supposed to allow for a slant to cross my face. And I hesitated. And I hesitated just one millisecond. And Justin Blackman got across my face. And the ball was thrown in the back pocket. But when I come around, I transition. I come around and I try to knock the ball down. He's way stronger than I am. So he catches the ball and he runs for a touchdown.
Wow.
Right. And this is the 2nd quarter of the game. This isn't even before half. And now I had made a play at the beginning of the game to, you know, I guess essentially, you know, help us out on offense. But the point that I'm making is, I tell my players, I know what it's like to lose. I know what it's like to make a mistake. And so if my coach had the belief in me to give me another opportunity after that play, I mean, I'm gonna believe in you. Now, until you prove otherwise, right? Now that's one of the tough things as a coach, is like, you want to make sure you give the players the benefit of the doubt, but at the same time, like, they have a job, I have a job. And we
That's
have
right.
the best product out there on the field to give the team opportunity to be successful. So one thing we talk about all the time is standard over feelings. Like the standard does not care about your feelings at all, right? Like, you can't be, you know, LeBron James and play at such a high level, you know, for all these years, and that's your standard. Like, nobody care about your feelings. Like, when, like, they see you not make that play, and he knows that. You know what I'm saying? Like, the greats understand that whatever the standard is, their feelings subside. Like, those are irrelevant, you know, as it comes to whatever the standard.
This episode is brought to you by Wayfair. Podcasts follow us everywhere. Whether you're cooking in the kitchen, chilling in the living room, or pretending to fold laundry in the bedroom. And with Wayfair, every one of those rooms can tell a story of its own. Their curated collections of furniture styles and prices make Wayfair the trusted destination to turn your home into your happy place. Shop everything home at wayfair.com with free and easy delivery straight to your door.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
This podcast is brought to you by Carvana. Buying a car shouldn't eat up your week. That's why Carvana made it convenient. Car buying that fits around your life, not the other way around. You can get pre-qualified for an auto loan in just a couple of minutes and browse thousands of quality car options, all within your terms, all online, all on your schedule. Turn car buying into a few clicks and not a full week's endeavor. Finance and buy your car at your convenience on
Carvana.
Financing subject to credit approval. Additional terms and conditions may apply.
Maybe.
Yeah, no, I love that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And that's What I'm hearing, Terrence, is this is what leadership looks like: grace, patience, building that confidence, all in the same time of saying there's still a performance, there's still a standard, and so it's not just, hey, yeah, I can still love you, we can still be good, and with that said, you still have to hit this standard. So it's not just about, hey, he's being mean to me or something like that. And I think that's really good. I was watching a documentary about Celine Dion. I think it's called I Am Celine. It's on Prime Video. It was tough, man. You get emotional. I got emotional watching it because she has stiff muscle syndrome, and so it affects her her vocal cords and her whole body. But the reason why I'm saying that is because you mentioned standard over feelings, and so when she went back into the studio to sing, you could just hear her listening, and she's shaking her head no. She's like, no. She's like, no, that's not Celine. And so even the greats understand, no, that's not my standard. And it's frustrating once you start losing that, but there has to be that standard for sure.
Yeah.
Go back to 2012. So you're at Stanford. I believe that's when you're graduating. What happened next? And then how did you eventually decide I want to be a coach?
Yeah. So after I graduated, I signed undrafted with the Cincinnati Bengals. And I was there towards the tail end of fall camp. And so just before that last cut, that's when I was released. And then I was, trying to make a roster in some form or fashion, doing different workouts, even tried the Canadian Football League workouts as well. And nothing ever really panned out for me in terms of the timing. And so that was really challenging because, my whole life, I envisioned playing at the next level, playing in the NFL. And so I was able to attain that goal in terms of gaining that opportunity, but I didn't have the sustainable, I guess, career that, I desired, so to say. And so reality hit me hard. It hit me real hard. But then I was able to, I guess, in that moment reflect on, okay, man, hey, you graduated from Stanford. Life's not over, you can, everyone says you graduate from a place like Stanford, man, there are plenty job opportunities waiting for you to just step in the door. And so I interviewed for a couple of different, corporate opportunities, and I even got offered the job, but it wasn't what I was passionate about. And that took some prayer, and that took some reflecting, and coming to realization like this isn't what I was purposed to do. And so, stayed in prayer, and I was fortunate one day to go watch. I was going to go watch my younger brother. He was playing at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. He was a quarterback, and they were playing they were playing New Mexico. Yeah, they were playing New Mexico. So my dad and I drove all the way out to New Mexico to go watch him play from LA. And I was watching that game, and towards the tail end of the game, it's like I had an epiphany. It's like, man, I miss being around the game. I had coached, volunteered at a high school. One of my old high school coaches was the head coach at the high school. So I was volunteering in the summer. I was doing this 7-on-7 coaching, and I was still around the game, and I was like, man, I miss it. Like, I just miss it. And then not only did I miss the game, I saw the impact that I was having on the lives of the young men that I was having the opportunity to volunteer, coach for. And so I was like, man, I can do this. Like, matter of fact, no, like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so after the game, I told my brother's running back coach, I said, hey, Aristotle Thompson, he's one of my mentors. I mean, he's the godfather to my daughter. I told him, I was like, hey, man, I was like, I want to do this. Coach said, I think I can do it. And he was like, you sure? I was like, nah, I think so. Like, this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And then he was like, all right, stay by your phone. The next thing you know, towards the tail end of that season, I get a phone call from him saying, hey, Keith Bonifa, who was a running backs coach at the University of Washington at the time, he's going to be out in this area. They may be looking for a defensive GA to come in after this season. Are you interested? I say, man, of course. Like I would love the opportunity. He was like, okay, well, he's going to be out in the IE. Like I'm going to give him your contact information so you guys can connect.
Yeah.
So I connect with him while he's out on the road doing a little bit of recruiting. I connect with him. And, he, doing a whole rundown, asking me questions, man, make sure this is what I want to do. And I interviewed for the linebacker defensive GA position. So it was a defensive GA position coaching the linebackers. Mind you, I play into the back end. So I interviewed for that position. And I interviewed with Chris Peterson, who was the head coach at the time. I retired. Yeah. I interviewed with him, and at the conclusion of the interview, basically it was like, man, man, you're a great guy. I think you would do an amazing job. However, this linebacker position, we want somebody that has a little more, linebacker experience. And but if our defensive back GA position becomes available, you will be one of the first ones we call, right? And so it was a bit disheartening at the time, but at the same time, it wasn't, because it was like, all right, there's still some hope.
Right.
And so I didn't get that position. And so I started off at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo in a restricted earnings position as an assistant position coaching the corners. And the restricted earnings, a lot of people don't know this. Restricted earnings, you making, less than $20,000, right?
Wow.
And so I started off with that. And so I got a spring in. I was coaching in the spring.
Yeah.
And literally, at a lot of the Cal Poly coaches that I worked with at the time, they still give me a hard time to this day. At the end of the spring, I get a phone call from Chris Peterson saying our defensive back GA position just opened up.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah, I'm interested. Because it's full circle. So Chris Peterson actually recruited me when I was so they offered me when I was at Orange Lutheran High School. They offered me when we was at Boise State.
Yeah.
And so I told him that on the interview. I was like, hey, coach, this might be your chance to give me the second go around.
Yes, I love that.
I didn't give you the opportunity the first go around.
Yeah.
And then I started off there. I left the Cal Poly slow job, and I started off there that summer going into the season of 2015. And I was there as a graduate assistant 2015, 2017.
Yeah.
And I had the opportunity to work alongside one of the best defensive-minded coaches, one of the best coaches in the game of football, Jimmy Lake, who's now the defensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons. And so I had the chance to learn from him as it came to defensive back play. Not to mention, I'd already played for one of the best defensive-minded coaches in Derek Mason.
Yeah.
So it was like, man, you talk about favor.
Right.
Favor is all over my life.
Yeah.
There is no explanation of that but God.
Yeah.
And so I was able to work alongside him and coach NFL caliber players, Buda Bakers, the Byron Murphys, the Taylor Raps, Sidney Jones. So I had the chance to learn, and really be indoctrined in the coaching profession from one of the best defensive back developers at the collegiate football level, which, man, he ended up pouring that into me, which afforded me the same opportunities, as years passed. So but that's kind of how I got in. That's how I got into coaching, man. It was all purpose led. And it's funny. So Courtney and I actually started dating at the very beginning part of my coaching profession.
Okay.
She had no clue about college. No clue. Her dad and her brother are baseball guys, so she grew up in the baseball family. So it worked out really well that she had no clue about football because she didn't know what she was getting herself into.
She had no idea.
Yeah,
Right.
no idea
Right.
what you're getting myself into, and then now look where we are going into my 10th season, and we were, going to my 10th season, and
Yeah.
she believes that this is what I've been purposed to do. She believes it in her
Yeah.
heart that this is
Yeah.
what God has placed on my heart to be able to lead and impact the lives of young men and expand His kingdom in doing so. So
Yeah.
it's been awesome.
Hey, man, I appreciate you sharing that. And that's God works in a lot of, mysterious ways. And I certainly believe in the providence of God. And I really appreciate you talking about your faith and talking about God and talking about Jesus. And I'm sure that pours out in your coaching and just day-to-day conversations. Let's talk a little bit about young men. You mentioned young men, and you have a young boy. My son's a little bit older, but we're both fathers. You have 2 kids. I have one. There's a brother here at the congregation. We're going to be starting a camp called Making Good Men. So we're going to get that started, Lord willing, at the time of this recording this coming Saturday. What do young men need to know today, Terrence? Obviously, our boys are younger, but when you have opportunity to talk to younger men and your players, what do you think they need to know? What do young men today need to be aware of and know? What do you want them to make sure they leave with while you're with them at that time?
Yeah, man, I think I was raised in such a manner that has allowed for me to be the man that I am today in terms of my dad instilling discipline, instilling you know dedication, instilling loyalty, um, instilling trust, um, vulnerability, all those things he instilled in me at such a young age, uh, that that's how I carry myself this day. And I think for young men, the guys that I have the opportunity to interact with, and I try to be mindful of the fact that I'm not everybody's dad. I try to be mindful of the fact that, I was raised differently.
Yeah.
But in some form or fashion, you know, I I I try to implement some of those traits, or teach them some of those traits of what discipline looks like, and and how discipline can, not from a being disciplined viewpoint, but to how you carry yourself,
Hmm.
right? To um, being intentional about the decisions that you make, right? Because every decision that you make, again, I said earlier, every decision that you make has a profound impact on your life. And so it can be something as disciplined as, walking around how you dress, right? And again, like I said, I try to understand, like, I'm not like everybody. So I don't try to tell people how to be. I just try to preach the message of how you can be perceived, right? And as a young man, and and fortunately, you know, I shouldn't say fortunate, but it just so happens that in my room there are a lot of young black men, right?
Hmm.
And it helps in the sense that I understand how to connect with them on a
Right.
more intimate level.
Yeah.
Um, or brown man, like we have a Latino young man
Hmm.
in our defensive back room as well. We have Samoan man as well. So I I'm always on them about how they're perceived, right?
Okay.
And their perception, because ultimately, um, I was always taught, like, first impressions are everything. Like the fact of, I mean, like, it's to the point where I can be walking around and it could be a week or so after I've gotten my haircut, and I can hear my mom in the back of my head, like, you need to get your hair cut. Because you just never know. You just never know who you're going to
Yep.
then interact with, and you want to make sure you leave a lasting impression. And so,
Yeah.
the discipline of how you carry yourself, right? The discipline of like what's of importance to you, right? The discipline of how you treat others, right? the discipline of how you treat women. You know, that's one of the things I try to do a lot is bring my wife around. I try to bring her around a lot. I try to talk about how I treat my wife a lot. Because a lot of young men that I interact with, some of them may not have a fatherly figure at home, right? And so I try to give them a model of what that looks like, right?
Yeah.
The commitment, man, being committed to whatever it is that you're doing,
Yeah.
right? Being committed to whatever it is that you believe, right? And I'm always going to try to sow a seed with my faith, you know, any chance that I get in some form or fashion. But all of these things are things that are discussed in the good word, right? And so everything that, you know, the Bible essentially tells us and how we should carry, those are some of the same messages that I try to convey to, you know, my players in some form or fashion, man. I think the one thing I said, vulnerability, I think for a lot of young men and a lot of men in general, the challenge for us is to be vulnerable.
What do you mean by that? You mean like just, you know, if we're struggling with something, showing emotions, just talking, hey, I'm not doing well, or I need some help?
I think it's a variety of things, right? Exactly. Yeah. You know, showing emotion, being open to having conversations, right? Being flexible, you know, not being so guarded, you're allowing for your ego to be placed to the side, you know, your pride, you know, to be placed to the side. That's what I mean by vulnerability. One of the things, you know, we try to do in our room is, uh, we ask everybody what their why is. And we challenge everyone to get in front of the room to share their story and share what their why is. And that could be challenging for a lot of young men, certain young men, because they're not used to, you know, being put on the spot, and they don't want to share their story because one, they may be a bit uncomfortable. Two, they may fear how they'll be judged. You know, there are a lot of things that go into that. So we try to make it a safe space to where our guys feel comfortable that, like, this is home, you know. But that, you know, the vulnerability, the treating women though, I think that's so we try to have transparent conversations about that stuff, and especially in this day and age for the, you know, collegiate student athletes. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, it's first and foremost, you got to know how to treat people the right way, right? But
Amen.
I
Amen.
also think that, you know, because they're ambassadors of their programs, they're ambassadors of their universities, they're ambassadors. They're being placed on such a pedestal because of their skill set, their ability, and they're just being publicized, right? Because of those things, you're more risk of making, you know, ill decisions that could ultimately affect the trajectory of your career, and the lives of those that come behind you. And so we try to have transparent conversations. You know, we try to talk about things like, you know, what consent is. You know, we try to talk about, you know, like I said, I'm sharing how, like, I'm taking my wife on a date tonight. Like, this is where we going. You know, like, try to share those real life examples. I share my failures and my faults and my failures. You know, just so, you know, they can understand, like, you know, the growth that you'll experience. And so,
Yeah.
there's a lot that I would like, you know, to pass along to young men. But
Sure.
those are
Yeah.
those are some of the things
Yeah.
I feel consistently. Those are the things that I do try to talk about, and do try to instill in them. And work ethic, man. This is
Mm-hmm.
You're not gonna get anywhere in life without working for what it is that you want. I think we live in such an instant world, an instant society, where everything is available for you at your thumb, your fingerprints, that we lose sight of what it looks like to work. And so that's where the game of football, you know, some young men may come in expecting one thing. Hey, this ain't just gonna be handed to you. Like, we
Yeah.
expect you to get there, but you got to work for this. Like, this isn't. I don't know who made promises to you. We don't make promises to you during this deal. We tell you what we believe and the potential that's there, and then when you get here, it's your responsibility to work for what it is that you want. And
Yeah.
that's the same thing in life. Like, you got to work for the things that you desire in life. Nothing can be handed to you. And if it's handed to you, man, it's
Ain't gonna
probably
work.
there's probably a headache waiting for you right soon as you open that door, right? And so that's where we try to make sure they understand like what that looks like, and working for things that are worthwhile.
Yeah. I really appreciate you sharing that, Terrence. And, that hit home with me because my dad wasn't around growing up, and he had a very challenging childhood, and he struggled with alcoholism, and he was more of the mean drunk, and so saw a lot of things growing up with my mom being physically abused. And in the Old Testament and Kings and Chronicles, you have stories of fathers and sons, and sometimes the sons would replicate or repudiate. So that's what I like to tell people too. You replicate the good things. He was a hard worker when he was sober. He was a great guy for many years to my mom, but then you repudiate the things that are wrong and shouldn't be doing. So I really appreciate that. And I got a list of other questions, man. And I've already taken more time than I told you in the email that I was going to take. We talked for about 15 minutes before we got started, so I want to respect your time. But I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I want to leave you with any final thoughts you want to share with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, since I appreciate your calling and preaching and serving God's kingdom. One of the things that has been consistent for me this year, that I've really, really leaned heavily on, is a Bible verse, and that's Romans 8:28. For everything works together for the good of those who love the Lord, that are called according to his purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And the thing that I really want to highlight on is everything works together for the good. And, there are many other biblical verses you talked about. I can do all things, consider it all joy. Like there's many other references to that principle in the Bible that I think just correlates with real life. So whatever it is that you may be facing, perspective is key. And I think if you can have the mindset of this moment, this circumstance, this obstacle, this situation, if you can have the mindset of this benefiting you in the long run, I think, man, you're only giving yourself an opportunity to just continue to climb higher and higher. So whatever that looks like, I know for me, that's something I try to tell myself, in the thickness of season, when, them hours start getting long, and then them nights of sleep start getting less and less realistic. Something that I try to tell myself is everything is working together for the good. And so I hope that encourages somebody that, could potentially be, in a rough spot, or hopefully to continue to provide someone with hope that's received favor and has been blessed. Like, everything that you will experience is going to work together for your good, some form or fashion.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Terrence. And may the best, I don't want to say good luck. I know you're putting in a lot of hard work and preparation, so I look forward to seeing you guys in action this year. And I'll be watching you, so look forward to seeing you on the sideline.
Yeah, I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all the support.
You're welcome. Yeah, you're welcome. You're welcome. And for those who are listening, thank you so much. Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next time. Take care. God bless.